Yeah, another edition of Two Tire Change here on Driving to the Top Productions. My name is Big Rich Richardson, and a race that we talked about a little bit last week as far as not being as exciting as the previous three, and it really wasn't parts that we'll get into later on. But we definitely want to welcome you into the show. It is every Monday here at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, here on Driving to the Top Productions, and it's a big big weekend to be talking about on the NASCAR circuit. We'll get into a few different things, not just, of course, Christopher Bell winning his third straight race, but we had a female driver in the Cup Series for the first time in 18 years, things of that nature. Hit us up here if you got questions, if you got comments, please feel free. We've got plenty of time to be talking about your questions, your comments about the race, anything that would be of interest to you about the race or the show itself. And it's one of those weekends that we again did not have a Truck Series race, but we did have an Xfinity race, and boy, did we have an Xfinity race uh, at Phoenix Saturday evening, and big win, a big win, um, and for Eric Almirola, and that's he's one of those guys that you kind of pull for the guy. Does that make any sense? You really pull for the guy. He was a full-time driver on the Cup Series for quite a while. Ended up retiring from Cup Series, drives part-time on the in the Xfinity Series, and he just he does really well when he's in one of these really good cars. When he was in the Cup Series, he wasn't really with a team that put a lot of that had that top-notch machinery, top-notch equipment to work with. And it it was definitely a race that you saw some physicality, of course, at the end. But with what Eric Almirola is able to accomplish, I mean, it's amazing. Um, and I'm happy to see it. You know, he's been driving for Joe Gibbs in the Xfinity Series, which is very cool. Which is good also for me because I like Coach Gibbs. Problem is he's got guys running for him in Cup that I don't really care for. You know, I'm not the biggest Chase Briscoe guy. Y'all have heard me talk about that. I'm not a Christopher Bell guy. Ty Gibbs is okay, but I think he's tremendously underperforming. Um, rookie year came out, was really close to winning a couple of races, but a couple of mistakes caught him. Now, I mean, he really hasn't. Last year and this year hasn't really done a whole lot to get better, and that's the problem. That's the big problem right there is that he hasn't done much to get better. Um, so when we look at the Xfinity race, you have Eric Almirola, as I mentioned, winning the race. Alex Bowman second, Brandon Jones third, Ryan Sieg fourth, Justin Allgaier fifth, Taylor Gray sixth, Sam Mayer seventh, Christian Eckes eighth, Jesse Love ninth, and Nick Sanchez in the 10 spot. Two big names that were actually in the same wreck very, very far back in the field. Sheldon Creed, 36th, Austin Hill, 37th. Former teammates. And boy, I tell you, it was pretty ugly there with those two guys. I mean, there was just nothing going on. There really wasn't. Those guys just could not, would not, whatever you wanted it to be. It just was not a good day for either one of those guys. Finishing 36th and 37th definitely did not help in the point standings either. When we look at the Xfinity point standings, of course, Eric Almirola is not a full-time driver, so he does not get credit for the as far as the playoff standings go. So we still have those, uh, Jesse Love and Austin Hill and Connor Zilich locked into the playoffs at the moment. Also in on points, though, would be Justin Allgaier, Sam Mayer, Sammy Smith, Sheldon Creed, Taylor Gray, Jeb Burton, Christian Eckes, Ryan Sieg, William Sawalich, Harrison Burton, and Josh Williams. Of course, we're a long way from the end of the season. I mean, there's some guys down in deep in the points race that we're going to hear from before this season's over. An Anthony Alfredo, or a Ryan Truex, even, or a Josh Bilicki, or a Matt DiBenedetto, Brandon Jones, Daniel Dye, Carson Quapple, guys like that. We're going to hear from those guys before the playoffs start. So don't get too concerned about it yet. It's going to be a very interesting Xfinity Series season, simply because you just had so much talent come up from Truck Series. I mean, you figure you had Taylor Gray come up, Christian Eckes comes up, William Sawalich comes up. Let's see, Daniel Dye came up, and so you have what is that, 5 or 6 guys that all came up from the from the Truck Series to now drive Xfinity. And all those guys are really, really good drivers. So we'll see how they play throughout the course of the season. But the way it looks right now, it's going to be really fun from now to the end of the regular season, and we go into the playoffs. The Cup race, and you got to remember, Phoenix is one of those funny tracks. It's a 1 mile, basically a 1 mile track. Very flat, and it doesn't. They had the 2 options of tires, and they had this in the Xfinity race too. You have the red tires, which are a softer tire, and a yellow tire, which is a normal tire. Those red tires, you could pick up a lot of ground fast, but when they go away fast. They don't do like the normal set does, where you have the ability to, gradually work yourself, have the tires wear out. That's not the case with these tires. It's 100% you're going, and then 100% you're done. Those tires just straight go away. So you have a certain amount of each tire, and it definitely makes a difference. You only have 2 sets of those makeup ground, what they call makeup ground tires, and then you have the normal tires for the rest of the race. William Byron was on the pole for this one. Joey Logano qualified second. Carson Hocevar third. Josh Berry was fourth qualifier. Eric Jones fifth. Chase Elliott sixth. Michael McDowell seventh. Justin Haley eighth. Tyler Reddick ninth. Denny Hamlin 10th. Spire Motorsports had all 3 of their cars qualify in the top 10. Hocevar third, McDowell in 7th, and Haley in 8th. Real nice showing there in qualifying. Hendrick had a couple of guys in the top 10. Of course, 2311, Gibbs, Penske, Legacy Motor Club. But a very, very nice showing by Spire Motorsports, getting all 3 of their cars in there. Logano, takes the lead on lap 1. Byron gets it back on lap 2. But at the start of the race, Catherine Legge who was in the number 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. Became the 17th woman to compete at NASCAR's top level, Cup level, whether it's Cup or Winston Cup or Sprint Cup or whatever Cup. The first since 2018, Danica Patrick was the last female to run. Leggy qualified 37th, and on lap 5, she spun. She was super tight. They played her radio communication after the spin. She didn't hit anything, but she spun, and so that caused a caution right out of the box. Another caution on lap 10. Cole Custer gets loose. Shocker. He ends up going into Todd Gilliland and Ricky Stenhouse. Stenhouse spins, clips Custer. Here comes another caution. Lap 18, it was really weird. They were going back to green after the yellow, and Joey Logano gets penalized. Now, at Phoenix, you can't go below the yellow line on a restart before the start-finish line. And they showed the aerial view, which made it even more apparent how close it was. He literally crossed it by the distance of his front left wheel. That's how far early he was. It's a shame. It really is. And I'm not the biggest Logano guy, but it's a shame. But it's, as they said on the broadcast, it has to be a black and white rule. There can't be gray area. When you're in that type of situation, you have to call that penalty. There's no question about it. Because if you give a little bit there, then the next time somebody does it, well, he did it and you didn't penalize him, so why am I getting penalized? Fully understand that logic, and it's. Do I agree with it? Yeah. I mean, it just not just because it was Joey Logano, because it was a case where they broke the rule, and they've got to be consistent because otherwise it'd just be chaos outside of that. Ryan Preece during during that caution, Ryan Preece switched to the softer tires. He made up a ton of spots. Goes from 33rd at the restart, worked himself all the way up to 4th. He was running about a quarter to a third of a second better than everybody else on those tires. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when they started to go, they went quick. It wasn't a case of, well, the tires are starting to go and he's gradually. No, he was losing time fast. So, there's the good and the bad to those softer tires. Then you get to the, to a couple of laps before the end of the stage, William Byron takes over. And Preece worked himself, like I say, all the way up to 3rd at the end of stage 1. Byron wins the stage, Reddick 2nd, Preece 3rd, Christopher Bell 4th, Blaney 5th, Barry 6th, Hocevar 7, Hamlin 8, Elliott 9, and Kyle Larson 10. When they started stage 2, a bunch of other cars jumped onto that softer option tire. Austin Cindric jumps into the lead on lap 88. Michael McDowell blows a right rear tire, bringing out the caution on lap 92, which takes a lot of people's tire strategies and just there they go. Which is another one of those things that makes it very interesting. All the lead lap cars came down pit road. Logano put on those softer tires, but coming out, Bell led Byron. And everybody else is looking at finishing the stage. Then we have what you don't have very often at Phoenix. We had the big one. We talk about the big one at Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, that kind of thing. We had the big one at Phoenix. Um, Justin Haley, Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe, 3 cars trying to fit into a 2-car wide area during the restart on lap 99. And makes a major mess of things. Carson Hocevar, Riley Herbst, all in the wreck. Hocevar, Herbst, and Haley were done. Gibbs and Briscoe weren't the same. So Spire Motorsports had 3 cars in the last 2 cautions, and the day was done. Keselowski, Cole Custer, Todd Gilliland were also in that wreck, but they were able to drive away. They had real minor damage. SVG and Austin Dillon were in the wreck too. And then after Briscoe ran for a little while, it was discovered that he was cooked as well. So that you don't see that kind of thing happen at Phoenix very often. If you see a multi-car wreck, it might be 2 or 3 cars. That's it. This one involved 9, and it was just like, goodness gracious. Get to lap 113. Christopher Bell leads Byron on the restart. Logano had already worked himself up to the top 15. Remember, back on 88, or I'm sorry, all the way back on 71, Logano had himself way in the back, starting back in 24th. So, he had worked himself up into the top 15. Logano works himself up to second by lap 125, right behind Christopher Bell with 60 laps to go in the stage. Then Logano takes the lead. So, again, those tires make a big difference. Lap 150, we have another country heard from in Ryan Blaney. And he's moving up with either tire. He gets himself into 6th. Logano is getting a bigger margin ahead of Christopher Bell in 2nd. And then Bell ends up catching Logano as the tires go away, as we were just talking about. And here we go. Logano gets passed by Bell. Bell's out in front. And the end of stage 2 is getting to Christopher Bell. Logano 2nd, Byron 3rd, Blaney 4th, Reddick 5th, Cindric 6th, Hamlin 7th, Suarez 8th, Kyle Larson 9th, and Josh Berry in 10th. So we get everything ready for stage 3. And all of the lead lap cars, except for Ryan Preece, are on the soft tires. And Tyler Reddick had worked himself into 2nd during the yellow. Catherine Legge spins again as Josh Berry went past her. Daniel Suarez T-bones the 78 car. Suarez tears up his car. Both cars are done for the day. And this gives Logano a really, really good chance to get back in the front. So, restart. Bell's back in the lead. Now we got Kyle Larson sticking his nose up into the top 3. He had been running top 10-ish most of the race. Now he's in the top 3. So we've got that running for us. You got another country heard from there. Ryan Preece then takes the lead with 76 laps to go on the softer tires, 12 laps into the run. So, they're not going to last for 88 laps. That They're usually good for about 70. Once you get past 70 laps on those softer tires at that track, no dice. Sorry. So, you get to lap 261 out of 312. Tyler Reddick, who had been fighting power steering issues all day long, the entire race, every time he came into the pits, they were dumping power steering fluid into that power steering pump. And because they just didn't have the ability to take it behind the wall and fit and replace the power steering pump. Bubba Wallace cuts a tire on lap 268, goes into the wall, brings out a caution, and that's not good for Ryan Preece and Logano. Byron was on pit road when the caution flew, so he goes a lap down. Elliott had pitted too, but the rest of the field comes down. Priest, Logano, and Jones, Eric Jones, did not have new tires. They didn't have new sets of option, the softer tires. That's not good, when you're getting that close to the end of the race. Because at that point, you're 54 laps from the end. Bell ends up leading Hamlin after a really good restart on lap 280. Byron jumps all the way up to ninth after taking the wave around. And then on lap 290, Ryan Blaney, his engine gives out. Caution comes out with 22 laps left. I honestly thought that this was going to be Ryan Blaney's race to win. And he would have given Bell a really hard run. He would have given Bell and Bowman both a really tough run if he doesn't blow that engine. Bell on the restart gets clear of Denny Hamlin. Hamlin and Larson are fighting for second. Josh Berry is third or fourth. Bowman is in fifth at this point. Byron's all the way up to sixth. Buescher seventh. Kyle Busch, Zane Smith, and Chase Elliott. This is with 8 laps to go. Ty Gibbs has a brake failure on lap 304 and hit the wall hard. It was one of those deals that when he hit that wall, it was not pretty. But again, we've talked about this on the show before. That safety equipment that they have in those cars and on the tracks, Gibbs was fine. So that's very good to hear. Comes down to Bell, Hamlin, and Larson. Bell and Hamlin are fighting for the last couple of laps. Larson was there and then fell back. Bell put his car right up against Hamlin on the last lap and ended up winning the race. So you had 2 Gibbs teammates there fighting for the win. Hamlin was not real happy afterwards. If you've had a chance to listen to the audio of Hamlin afterwards, I'm not going to quote what he said because this is a family program. However, it was some flowery language. There was no question about that. So when you look at the actual results, again, your winner, Christopher Bell, for the 3rd consecutive week. Denny Hamlin, 2nd. Kyle Larson, 3rd. Josh Berry, 4th. Chris Buescher, 5th. William Byron, 6th. Alex Bowman, 7th. Kyle Busch, 8th. Zane Smith, 9th. Chase Elliott, 10th. Some other big names in the field. Joey Logano finished 13th. Tyler Reddick finished 20th. Daniel Suarez, 23rd. Shane Van Gisbergen, 31st. Brad Keselowski, 33rd. Carson Hocevar, 36th. So that all leads to this. We've only had 2 winners. William Byron won the Daytona 500, and Christopher Bell winning the next 3 races. So past them, looking at the playoffs, it's Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, John Hunter Nemechek, Ricky Stenhouse. Just outside looking in, Michael McDowell and Ross Chastain. So again, this is another one, with only having 2 winners in the first 4 races, and I think Christopher Bell is not going to be the only multiple race winner we're going to have. I firmly believe we'll have 4 or 5 of them. Byron will end up winning multiple. I think Larson wins a couple. I honestly think Reddick's going to win a couple. Wouldn't be surprised if Hamlin won, multiple. But I still think that we're going to have 16 different drivers win races. I firmly believe that. I think that we're going to have, in fact, I'm going to go out on a limb 6:25 Central Time on March the 10th. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's going to be 17 that we're going to have someone that wins a race that doesn't get into the playoffs. How about that one? Someone is going to win a race and not make the playoffs for the first time in the history of the playoffs. So, I'm throwing that out there. Who it's going to be, I don't know. It's way too early to go out on that particular limb. But now they go to Las Vegas. And the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series will be in Las Vegas this coming week. Along with the trucks. The trucks had a couple of weeks off. Trucks will race Friday at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Eastern, as I say that. 9 o'clock Eastern time for the trucks in Las Vegas for the EcoSave 200. And then the Xfinity Series on Saturday afternoon. Actually, Saturday evening, depending on 5 o'clock Eastern for the I'm sorry, 4:30 Eastern for the Liuna, Liuna. Trust me, folks. There's going to be some of these race names that I'm not going to have the first flipping clue what the heck they're talking about. This is one of them, the Liuna. I'll do some research on what Liuna is, but it will run 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central Saturday, and then Sunday, of course, the Cup Series will be at Las Vegas, wrapping up the weekend, and it's the Penzoil 400, as you can see the logo behind me, presented by Jiffy Lube. 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. It's a mile and a half track. So it's the second of the intermediate tracks. Las Vegas runs nothing like Atlanta. Atlanta is more of a super speedway, Daytona, Talladega type of racing. Las Vegas is not that way. You'll see a little bit of drafting and that kind of stuff, but grand scheme of things, no, it's not going to go that way. The other thing you got to look at too with this Las Vegas race, there's a lot of guys that have won this race that are going to be in the field, and that's one of the interesting parts of this, because as I'm double checking my research here, when you look at what's happened the last several years, Logano won the fall race last year. Kyle Larson won the spring race in 24 and the fall race in 23. William Byron won the fall race in 23. Logano won the fall race in 22. Alex Bowman won the spring race that year. Denny Hamlin won the fall race in 21. Kyle Larson won the spring race. Kurt Busch won the fall race in 2020. Not Kyle, Kurt. And then Joey Logano won in 2020. This is Kyle and Kurt Busch's hometown. So, and I don't think Kyle has, 2009. So, I mean, it would be interesting for him to break that streak at his home track. Just throwing it out there. I don't know that that's exactly where I'm going when I make my pick, which my pick will surely be right. We'll make that at the end of the program. In the Xfinity race last fall, AJ Allmendinger won the fall race. The spring race was John Hunter Nemechek. Riley Herbst won the fall race in 23, so he has experience there winning. Austin Hill, the spring race. Josh Berry in 2022 fall, and Ty Gibbs in the spring of 2022. All those guys winning Xfinity races. So you've got a lot of guys that are going to be in that Cup race that have won on that track, whether it's in Xfinity or whether it's in Cup. There's even a few guys that have won in the trucks on that track. Kyle Busch won in 23 in the truck series. Christian Eckes won in 21 in the Cup Series. John Hunter Nemechek won the spring race in 21 in the Cup Series. So you've got a few guys that know how to win on that track. May not necessarily be in Cup cars, but they know how to win on that track. They know how to drive that track. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I like watching races from Las Vegas. Las Vegas runs a lot like Texas Motor Speedway. And when you look at the NASCAR schedule, the NASCAR Cup Series schedule coming up, it's kind of I call it a fearsome foursome on these next four races because you've got a little bit of comfort in Las Vegas where you kind of spread the field out, and there you go. Homestead, Miami is going to run a lot like Phoenix, but on a 1.5-mile track instead of a 1 mile. Then you go short track racing to Martinsville, where you're on a 1/2-mile track for the Cookout 400. Then you turn right around the next weekend and go to Darlington on a 1.1 mile track. So, and then the following week you go to Bristol, and we all know what Bristol's like. So, and that's when they have their week off is the after the Bristol race, for April the 20th. So, it's gonna be that'll be what 9 races in when they have their break. We got, yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it'll be first 9. The 9 races will be in. So you'll be looking at basically a third of the way through the regular season. Is it going to tell you who's going to win this thing? No. I'm sorry to tell you. A third of the way through the regular season is not going to tell you who's going to win this thing. I can promise it. It's just not going to happen, because somebody somewhere along the way is going to get hot. And somebody's going to get hot toward the end of the season. And I say toward the end of the regular season from like halfway on. Okay. And you got to pay attention to that when you're looking at these guys because of that, they could very easily go on a run and push people out of the playoffs. I'm still stressing that I think there's going to be more than the 16 playoff drivers winning races. But be that as it is, we're looking at some interesting things with Las Vegas. The other cool part about Las Vegas, they've had, and this is really kind of interesting when you think about it. They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 different types of racing done on that track over the last. They've done dirt track races with like World of Outlaws. They've had K&N super speedways. They've had ARCA Menards. They've had NHRA drag races. Yeah, drag races. IndyCar races, Champ Car races, and then of course, the trucks and the Xfinity series. And it's just amazing the different types of races that you have at Las Vegas. And that's another one of those things that makes me think about Texas. Because man, they have the capabilities at Texas to do all kinds of racing. They run probably 8 or 10 different styles of cars there. And it's really, really cool to get a chance to see stuff outside of NASCAR, meaning Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. But seeing some of the other stuff run at a track, it's pretty cool. It's kind of interesting. So we've got that. What I'm looking at this week coming up, and when I look at this week's race and I look at the history and things of that nature, and I see some of those names, I look at who won last year. Well, last year in that Cup Series race. You had Logano in the fall, and you had Larson in the spring. Okay. And both of those, and Larson won 2 out of the last 3 races in Vegas. Byron has won there. Logano has won 2 out of the last 5. This race has pretty much been dominated by 2 things. Ford and Hendrick Motorsports for the last 3 seasons. So when you're looking at that and you're starting to think, okay, what am I going to do with my DraftKings lineup? What am I going to do with my fantasy lineup? Okay, of course you're running in Vegas. So there's going to be odds. We all know that. There's going to be odds. So let's find out who the betting experts are saying. Well, surprising to the surprise of nobody, Christopher Bell is at the top of the list. I mean, the guy's won 3 in a row. He's not going to win 4 in a row. By the way, the record, for those of you wondering, and he will never smell it, Christopher Bell would have to win 10 in a row to take the King's record, King Richard Petty. Kyle Larson is second at 5 to 1. William Byron 6 to 1. Ryan Blaney 7.5 to 1. Denny Hamlin 8 to 1. Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick 9 to 1. Joey Logano is 10 to 1. Then you start getting into some of the longer shots. And there's some longer shots in here that are naturally going to be cheaper in your DraftKings. But I like, when I'm looking at some of these, AJ Allmendinger is showing at 25 to 1. So is Eric Jones. John Hunter Nemechek is showing at 50 to 1. Now, granted, he might be 50 to 1 to win the race, but the kid has placed very well in his first 4 Cup Series races in his rookie season. He's sitting just outside the cut line right now. Noah Gragson is 12 to 1. Another one that you'll probably be able to get very inexpensively on your DraftKings or on your DFS. I keep saying DraftKings, whether you play FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever you're playing. If you're taking a Bell, a Larson, a Byron, a Blaney, a Hamlin, an Elliott, those guys are going to be very expensive, taking up a lot of your salary cap. You got to have a couple of guys that are going to be, I don't want to say El Cheapos, but El Cheapos. So if you could grab an Allmendinger and maybe a Gregson or a Josh Berry, then that'll allow you to get 3 or 4 of these big ones and have that, still feel good instead of taking guys that are going to be at the very back of the field and they're probably going to be 20 laps down. That never feels good. So, you have that opportunity in this race. And I tell you, my dark horse for this race is going to be Josh Berry. He had that 21 car for the Wood brothers running extremely well again this past week. He is absolutely, a lot of people thought when the Stewart-Haas thing went down and he's transitioned to Wood brothers, he ran well at Daytona. He ran well at Atlanta. He did well at the road course. Now he's doing very well in Phoenix. I don't see any reason why he doesn't do well unless he gets caught in a wreck. That's been Barry's biggest problem. That was his problem last year. He got caught. I would have to look into it, and I'll do that for next week. He had to have been caught in more wrecks than anybody that I'm aware of. He had to have. It was horrible. And he'd be running really good. He'd be running top 5, top 8. Get spun, have a wreck happen right in front of him, and he can't go anywhere. Stuff like that. So, with all that being said, Josh Berry's my dark horse for this week's race at Las Vegas. But who is the big guy going to pick to win this race? Well, like I told you before, Joey Logano has won 2 out of the last 5. Kyle Larson is won 2 out of the last 3. So, both of those guys would be kind of obvious picks. But I I'm gonna go out on a limb on this one. I am. I'm gonna go with a little bit longer shot. Um, I'm gonna pick the hometown guy. As much, and trust me, this pains me to do this. And if anybody shh, don't tell anybody. Especially don't tell my mother because I'm picking her guy. Um, but I'm gonna take Kyle Busch. I'm gonna take the hometown guy to win at his track and get that 61, I believe, 61, 62 race winless streak eliminated. Um, I really think that this would be the perfect track for him to break that. So I'm going to take Kyle Busch. My ideal starting lineup for DraftKings would be Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, John Hunter Nemechek, and Josh Berry. That would be my ideal lineup again. Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, John Hunter Nemechek, and Josh Berry. Play it, win. Hope you win big, and we'll have to compare notes on next week's show. Appreciate Josh, I appreciate you jumping in. Hosevar, I saw you said might be that last guy. I don't know. When it comes down to having those 17 guys, then it comes down to who's been consistent. So, maybe we can talk a little F1 on the next show as well. But we will next week be reviewing the Penzoil 400 from Las Vegas. Maybe get a little F1 in on here next week as well. Get you set for the following week, which is going to be, in Homestead, Miami. I knew that until I looked down. So, next week we will recap the Penzoil 400 out of Las Vegas, get you set for Homestead, Miami. And like I say, even talk a little F1 as it's race weekend for them coming up. But I appreciate everybody that's been a part of the broadcast tonight. Appreciate you guys for checking us out. Don't forget, every Monday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, right here, Driving to the Top Productions. Hit me up on Facebook, Rich Richardson, or on Twitter, and I've got to fix this on my screen here. It's Big Rich 8371. Hit me up on Twitter, Big Rich 8371, and let's discuss. Give me questions, comments, concerns. Maybe there's a topic you'd like for me to cover. I'd love to hear that. Let's do it. But until next week, hard to believe we already blew through our time for this week. Until next week, my name is Big Rich Richardson. We'll be here next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central on Driving to the Top Productions. Till next week, so long, everybody.